Buddy, we're going to go ahead and get our workshop started, and we'll start with item 2, which will be the approval of the agenda. 2.1, changes to agenda and approval of agenda. And we do have one change, and this will be on the consent agenda. Added item 8.20, request to appropriate No Child Left Behind curriculum specialists, and this will be presented by Dr. Lee Hale. And so when we get to that item, we can ask about that. So section 3 is recognitions. 3.1 will be recognition of Riverside Elementary School recipient of the 2018 through 19 Exceeding Expectations Award, presented by East Coast Technical Assistance Center. 3.2, recognition of Flarosa Elementary School recipient of the 2018 through 19 Exceeding Expectations Award, presented by East Coast Technical Assistance Center.
I want to say something about that, or ask about that. I don't recall this award. This is great. And so, is this new, or is this just the first time we've had schools get it? But either way, I think it's exciting that we're seeing this.
Correct. So I'm not sure whether or not it's new, but to my knowledge, it is the first time that we have schools receiving this particular award, and to have 2 schools
Yeah, one of them's
receiving
mine.
it. Absolutely.
And one of yours, though.
So this
Yeah,
is something
that's
we're obviously
exciting.
we're proud of.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, I remember pre-COVID and everything. I remember you bringing this up, and that it was something that these 2 schools, it was a first for our district. So people are wondering why now 2018, 2019 that we're just
Because they have to
getting
go
around.
back and do the
Yes.
scores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, okay, so 3.3 is recognition of the 2022 Elementary Assistant Principal of the Year, Amy Church. 3.4, recognition of the 2022 Secondary Assistant Principal of the Year, Gerald Horton. 3.5, recognition of the 2022 Elementary Principal of the Year, Don Massey. And 3.6, recognition of the 2022 Secondary Principal of the Year, Michelle Heck.
And Mr. Bryant, I'd like to say that as a member of that committee, we had outstanding candidates, all of them. And it was very, very difficult to end up with just one. Maybe one day we can look at having more than just one. I'm not sure if that's a way to do it.
We
but
have a Principal of the Week.
Yeah.
Well, they're there, especially with what they're dealing with these days.
Yes.
And all of our teachers and faculties and staff and so forth. But anyway, I just wanted to say is that I'm one member of that committee. These winners are outstanding, and we very much appreciate that. And I think this probably addresses your question one night about who are they, and the superintendent gladly is now going to be making a formal recognition of these winners, and I so much appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Chambers, for bringing this program to us, because as I think we mentioned one time before, we do recognize our teachers and our ed support and so many people, and these principals are just instrumental, especially, with what's going on with COVID. Well, all of the employees are, so thank you, because it's well-deserved and much needed.
And I'll just say thank you as the chair. Thank you to Dr. White for serving as our board representative
Yes, sir.
on that committee. And Mr. Chambers, again, like Ms. Gardner said, appreciate you getting this program back up and running. And I know principals look forward to it, assistant principals look forward to their recognition. All right, so section 4, we have no visitors at this time. Section 5 is administrative personnel appointments, and we will have one appointment of principal for Lewis School as recommended by the superintendent for approval. And 6 is public comment. Members of the public desiring to address the school board, Form MIS 5241, public input and or discussion of agenda items. And of course, we never know until Monday night if we have somebody or a group coming to speak to us. Section 7, committee and staff reports. This will be for workshop only. 7.1 is in-county travel paid for the period of December 9th, 2021 through January 5th, 2022. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the same period. 7.3, Okaloosa County District School Board internal funds financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021.
And Mr. Bryant?
Yes, sir.
If it's all right with you, sir, I'd like to ask a couple of questions about these audits.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Chambers, if it would be okay, would that be all right to have Ms.
Absolutely.
Perry come forward?
Yes, sir.
Would you like her to go ahead and address all the
Yeah,
items
maybe.
that are out there?
Yeah, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And if Ms. Perry, if you wouldn't mind, if I had a question, if I could ask you in the midst of your presentation.
Okay.
I hate to do that, but I think that might be the best way to handle, so we get the complete truth out there rather than maybe just portions by particular individuals. Thank you.
So, but just a kind of a informational, in the years 1920 and 2021, those 2 years, we've had 11 new bookkeepers, 14 new principals.
Now, let's wait, I have a question then.
Uh-huh.
Now, I knew we had a lot of changes, but I didn't know we had that many. Would
Yes.
you give those numbers for me one more time so I can?
11 new bookkeepers, 14 new principals.
Okay. And I will tell you that from my personal experience, that I'm sure it's not the case for the other former principals in here, that school finance was one of the most difficult matters, most comprehensive matters for me to get an understanding of as a school principal. So now you said how many new principals there were?
14.
14 new principals during this time that had to gather up the knowledge base to administer their school finances in accordance with Florida standards and in accordance with school district standards on the fly.
And in the midst of COVID.
In the midst of COVID, yes, yes.
That's, first of all, that's a lot of personnel changes to begin with. And in the midst of school finance, having one time had the maybe perhaps unfortunate pleasure for my students of teaching school finance in graduate school, I can tell you that that's tough, that many changes. And then you said how many new bookkeepers there were?
11.
11 new bookkeepers. Same thing. Now, all of a sudden, they have to go in there and figure out, how do I process a check? How many forms do I have to make sure are done correctly? How do I run game receipts? I mean, it's a phenomenal job. And I think in part, our recognition of that on the school board's level, and certainly in association with our collective bargaining partners, the unions. Do we still pay our bookkeepers additional supplement?
Yes,
I know
we do.
So we recognize that for bookkeepers, it is a monumental task to deal with the significant legal requirements, state and local, concerning school finance internal funds. All right. I didn't mean to elaborate so much, but I thought that after she gave those numbers, that might be important, colleagues, for the public to know.
I had planned to comment if you hadn't, Dr. White.
All right, thank you.
And I mean, there's the school internal funds are huge. I mean, just last year, they took in $8.7 million in school internal funds.
Now, that's in nickels and dimes often, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like just one great big check.
No.
Those are
no,
nickel and
no.
dime accounts where they have to account with all the paperwork associated with every nickel and dime.
And a
Well,
lot
just-
of it's literally cash.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And just the number of transactions, we're at 37,000 transactions through the whole district.
Now,
So
wait a minute,
it's
that's another
monumental.
number.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when you say transactions, you said how many last year?
37,000.
37,000 transactions. Does that mean that's how many pieces of paper there were?
Just having to do with receipts, disbursements, and any kind of transfers. Then on top of, everything else, dealing with reports and balancing and things. But that's just the number of transactions that they put into that system,
Okay,
the computer
okay.
system.
So each transaction could have several
Pieces of paper.
Oh, yes.
several
Oh, yes.
steps,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
numerous.
Definitely.
I remember from my days, all the different, yes.
Definitely.
Well,
Definitely.
well, when
Steps
we
that go-
talked, that's right. And when I talked to Ms. Perry about this, I said, so just in my little experience at a little middle school, And you tell me we brought in over $8 million, and you tell me we had 37,000 transactions. Just, and Mr. Horton, I'm not a mathematician, but just in round numbers, I ask you, well, does that mean there were over 1 million pieces of paper or 2 million pieces of paper? And that's we haven't counted. We don't have that kind of time. But I suspect it was. That's how many pieces of paper that are auditable, that could potentially be looked at by
That
an
had
auditor.
signatures attached. And Dr. White, I remember, and you will too, way back in our early days, we had signature stamps that other people could be assigned out.
Yes.
That went away
Oh, yeah.
Away.
many decades ago. So now, every piece of paper has to be individually signed by that principal.
And kept up with. Yeah.
And they did a really good job, and especially with them being new, there's so many new people, all the challenges with COVID, people being in and out. The audit, really, it was just, there were some errors, some documentation errors. I mean, there was nothing to do with any kind of financial problems.
So the auditor comes in and they say, I want to see your transactions. And so the bookkeepers, y'all remember, they go get their great big
Folders.
boxes and they fill up those boxes. And I remember that there were a lot of boxes. And the auditors go through and they pull out particular transactions and look for those pieces of paper. I guess the thing I want to ask about this audit, as a friend of mine would ask when he used to sit here, was there any missing money?
Oh, no,
All right.
not at all,
Okay.
not at all.
All right.
Just a few documentation.
Okay,
And
so
just-
these were
and just-
documentation
And just
errors.
3 problems, and like you said, we have 37,000 transactions. If they had 3 problems, they would have had a write-up.
Well, so when the auditors found a problem, were the bookkeepers given a chance to go find the paper?
No, sir.
But did I hear in the past that they maybe were able to, or,
Yes.
and that's been discussed?
In the
Okay.
past, there was more communication.
Okay.
From the auditors, and there
Well, I
should
bet
be
you there
more
will be next
communication
time.
in the future.
That's
Yes,
so.
yes.
And we're talking about, if anybody's, watching, it's just like dates that were not, maybe
Yep.
on
Or
the
paid
check
stamps.
recs or.
One was crazy about the paid stamp.
The paid stamp.
Nobody does a
Was it on
paid stamp anymore,
every
just like you
sheet?
said, they don't do a signature
Well, and
stamp.
because it's on the computer now.
Yeah,
So it's easy to look and see.
that's antiquated, that just needs
And I think that's
to
something.
be out of there.
Sorry, Ms.
Well,
Perry
that might
even
be
mentioned
something-
that maybe
Yeah.
addressing and changing.
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes.
And she is, and
Yes.
that's, we talked about that yesterday. And is Focus going to help them in the future too? Will Focus,
Focus, internal funds will go through Focus.
so that's going to make,
Yes,
that will hopefully
Yes, sir.
do away with a lot of.
yes, yes. But, I mean, we're very proud of the work they've all done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they've done a
Absolutely.
great job.
But 39 schools, 37,000 transactions, 2 million pieces of paper. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's.
Yes, it is.
And I'll say this, and I'll tell on myself. I didn't always have perfect audits. I had great bookkeepers. There are a couple of other principals here, maybe they always had perfect audits. And it used to make me so angry when, because I wanted everything to be perfect, just like I know the superintendent does, and the staff does, and the board members want everything to be perfect too. But with that many transactions, I mean, there's bound to be a signature missing occasionally, or whatever it might be. And I just think, too, after having looked at it, it really is an outstanding audit, even though there were some findings, Mr. Bryant, you're right.
And Ms. Perry and her group are already on top of it, and we're not in any way making excuses or anything of this. It is, I mean, it is what it is, but you are already
Yes.
on top and have put things in place. And I know, again, Dr. White, I also one time did not have the best audit, but the year after that and going forward, I did. So sometimes this just gets our attention, and again, it's those little dates and, stamp paid.
Well,
Yes.
But your
Yes.
group's already on top.
And our internal funds accountant is visiting all of these schools that had
Excellent.
the audits. going over the findings
Okay.
with the bookkeepers and principals. She's going through their documentation for this year, looking to see if there's any problems, and she's pointing those out. She gave it to me in writing. I've passed that on in writing to the principals and the bookkeepers just to make sure, and we're using this as learning.
All right.
We're
And-
learning.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
And I know that the superintendent who is in charge of these employees will also be working to ensure that with all these new employees, let me say it that way, that they receive the kind of training and help and assistance that you'd want to give someone who you suddenly have handed them a great big basket of responsibility and papers to deal with. And by the way, you're going to be checked to see if you did it all right.
And the accountability, I mean, again, the training's there,
Mhm.
but going forward, after the training and as time goes on, this is part of the principal evaluation and bookkeeper evaluation. So again, we give everybody an opportunity to improve the training. However, it does tie into evaluations. I mean, people are held accountable at the end of the day.
Excellent point, Ms. Norton.
And I just want to add, this audit and any audit that we have, it's something that we take seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And when there are findings, this is an opportunity for us to get better. And Mr. Horton, if you'd come up really quickly. And I just want to just also state and just clarify, so one, overall, this is a very good audit. But two, when you look at just the financial standing of the school district, it's an area that we do well. To be considered an A+ school district by the state of Florida, not only that do you have to be academically strong, but there's a financial component that I just want y'all to briefly talk about. And then also, when you look at what we just did with our COP process, and you go through there's financial ratings that school districts receive. So if you could just talk about those two areas just briefly.
Yes, sir. So Mr. Chambers is referring to the designation by the Florida legislature of an academically high-performing school district. And so if my math is correct, Okaloosa County is the only school district in Florida who has received that academically high-performing district rating for every year since 2013. And what that means is, in addition to being a high-performing district academically with our student performance, we're also been class size compliant for every year during that time. And every year since the amendment has been in the Constitution, Okaloosa County has met class size. It might be an interesting side note to know that of 67 counties in Florida this year, it appears that 30 of them, based on the initial report from DOE, did not meet class size. And then the third leg of that academically high performing is no material findings or weaknesses in the audited financial statements. And so every year, and that doesn't mean prior to 2013 there were some. It just means that all those components together, we're the only district in Florida who's met those requirements since every year since 2013. So that's significant. And to Dr. White's point, I think perfection is what we strive for. We give perfect effort, but sometimes the results are short by one or two areas, and we will work to keep moving in that direction.
Who makes the award of a high-performing school district?
So it comes from the Department of Education. It comes through Tallahassee. Those schools districts are presented. I believe they're presented to the legislature, but it's under the guidance of statute requirements to make that designation.
So they look at all that stuff and they say, okay,
Absolutely.
tag, you're it, and you've been it for how long?
Every year since 2013.
Well, that deserves a commendation, superintendent and staff. Good job.
The second piece of this, Mr. Chambers wanted me to address, is our COP process right now that we're working through. Julie and I just had the privilege of being on some calls with our financial advisors, Ford & Associates, and the underwriters that the school board selected through the RFP process. We had a conversation with Moody's and Fitch. Both are financial rating services that not only rate businesses and they were out seeking funding for their own purposes or ratings, but also school districts and governmental agencies. And so in both those cases, we received information back just this week that the district was rated AA for COP issuance, which is a very strong rating, and it is what we expected based on some preliminary information. So there were no surprises when Moody's and Fitch both looked at the school district. So those ratings are sound and will support us as we go out for funding at the end of this month.
And what are
to
those
get-
ratings based on, Mr. Hort?
They're based on several components, but they're financially based. So
that's it.
our liquidity, our debt, our operating expenses, understanding, and those agencies do, they understand that in Florida, the revenue that we receive is based upon what the legislature agrees to send us per student. So they know that we don't have necessarily control over that, but we do exercise good control over, in their mind, is our operating expenses. And so we know, they know as a district, we spend only what we receive, and we maintain healthy fund balances and reserve balances. And that's always been a benchmark of Okaloosa County Schools. So very pleased, we were able to respond back to those agencies with no comment. Essentially, we agree that you think we're a very sound school district. We agree, and so those ratings are now out and published.
Awesome. Very good.
And I just wanted to add one more piece on the financial side. One of the areas that I'm proud of is the fact when you start looking at staffing, we closely monitor, every year when we go into a new school year, because we know staffing obviously equates to our finances. And we closely monitor, based on enrollment, the number of staff that we're going to have out in schools. Mr. Hort and Ms. Perry are very much in tune to that. You look at a district staff, we have a very hard-working district staff, but a very slim district staff. And so we've taken a conservative approach to the finances and how we run this school district. So from audits to being a high-performing school district to the way we staff, the way that we make decisions, finances is obviously it's a huge part of what we do every day. And again, in areas where we can get better, then we're obviously going to do so.
And I'll just make one final comment about that. The thing that stood out to me on both 7.3 and 7.4 were those final statements that nothing of material value was found to be out of place. So to me, those are the most emphasized statements in the whole documents.
Yep.
And I do want to point out that the district financial audit, financial and federal audit, as you know, the federal programs are very strict, had absolutely no findings.
Exactly, 7.4. So thank you, Julie.
Thank you for
Thank
you.
all of you
Thank
and your
you.
departments.
Well, and also under transparency, are these audits online for individuals to see?
Oh,
Are
yes,
these?
ma'am. I'm
Okay.
gonna, after the board meeting Monday night, I'll be
Okay.
posting them to the
Individuals can
finance
go.
website. And there's also a fiscal transparency link or fiscal information link on the front page of the district's website that takes you to all that information.
Perfect.
So the public can see everything.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Well, and I hope somehow that they perhaps see some of the comments and some of the discussion that we've had here today.
Absolutely.
Because I think it may shed more light on the paperwork.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. And, just on those the internal fund finance, or the audits there, we talked about turnover and how many new principals, new bookkeepers. One school, in fairness to them, they had 2 new principals and 2 new bookkeepers that year. So,
With COVID.
with COVID, so. All right, so now we'll move on down. I believe I did 7.3, so 7.4 will be the financial and federal single audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021, report number 2022 through -084, January 2022, and operational audit report number 2022-014, September 2021. 7.5 quarterly report, short-term facility use contracts and lease agreements under the $5,000 threshold. 7.6 quarterly report, service agreements under the $5,000 threshold for internal and budgetary funds. And now we'll move to the consent agenda. And again, board members, to stop me anytime on any item. 8.1 will be the approval of the consent agenda. 8.2, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of January 6, 2022, minutes of the workshop meeting of January 6, 2022, minutes of regular meeting of January 10th, 2022. 8.3, appropriation of District 4 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Laurel Hill School for an electronic message center in the amount of $34,910. And if you did see the attachment on there, I did have them printed up, but really excited about this. I know Dr. Kelly and I were talking about it. The old sign up there was when she was up there, she was telling me how they raised money for.
Wait, are you saying that the sign is the age of Dr. Kelly? Is that what you're going at? Is that what I heard you say, Mr. Bryant?
Well, Mr. Vanchuk, are you saying that would be antique then?
No, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what Mr. Bryant's saying here.
I will just say that that sign that's up there now.
Needs to come down.
Needs to come
Needs a facelift.
So it
Much
is
just like I
gonna be
do.
coming down.
Let's just not talk age, it just needs to come down.
Well, can I make a comment about that?
Yes, sir.
I remember a long time ago that I had a sign that we had to get a ladder out to climb
To
up and
change
change
the
the letters.
letters,
And
yeah.
and one of the best things that ever happened was when it became electronic.
Yeah.
And I could do it from my computer because I got a little concerned about climbing up on that 10-foot ladder and changing those letters. So
Yeah.
I hope the new one will provide all that computer access and make it
Certainly
easy.
looks nice.
Well, this, just so people that are listening will know that Laurel Hill is tucked away off of Highway 85.
That's right.
But they do have a sign up by the Tom Thumb and the downtown center, the Center Square area. This is where this sign is going to go. So they still have their sign in front of their school, that they still have to put the lettering
Yeah.
up there.
Oh,
But
there you
it's
go.
not, it's easy for them. It's
Okay.
not like when I worked at a movie theater when I was in high school, we had to have a pole. Or the kids at Crestview High School, the leadership, they still have to do that
Oh.
with their sign down
Good
in the
gracious.
city. So.
Well, this is very nice, and not only for the school, but let's face it, that's the heart of going through Laurel Hill right there. It's a very well-traveled road, and I think it's a nice addition to their town up there, and I'm sure they're very excited to see this improvement, so.
And I know my last comment about this is rather obvious, but school signs are so important. I mean, that's, your parents come there all the time to pick up kids and so forth, and schools are able to put important messages on their signs to let folks know about what's going on.
Sometimes
And,
that's the only time parents know that the report cards are being sent out.
That's
right,
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
'cause
I had some students that didn't always want me to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thank you,
Report card
Mr.
day.
Bryant, for providing that funding.
Yeah, this
for
is
us.
great.
That is great, thank you.
Can't wait to see it.
8.4, budget amendment number 4, fiscal year 2021 through 2022. 8.5, monthly financial statement for December of 2021. 8.6, invoices to be approved for payment. 8.7, school donations. 8.8, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for December 2021 totaling $29,599,148.38. 8.9, ITB 22-06, electronic message center for Laurel Hill School. 8.10, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, International Restaurant Distributors Incorporated. 8.11, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, Polar King. 8.12, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, Apple. 8.13, tag-on bid purchase RFP 21-06, Trade Services. 8.14, exempted purchase over $25,000, Apogee, I guess that's how you pronounce that one. 8.15, service agreement number 22-95, Dr. Dana Stevens. 8.16, employee assistance program services contract between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Pattison Professional Counseling Center for counseling services. 8.17, application to the state of Florida for safety and security of school buildings, school hardening grant.
Can we go back to that 18.16, please?
ma'am.
I'm sorry. I know we've had this assistance program for a long time, Dr. Hale, with Pattison, but I just wanted to point out, we talk a lot about mental health, particularly for students, but our employees are, there's a lot on them, so I'm glad that we have this availability that allows them these services, because we all need that opportunity to let off that stress and frustration to a professional here, and I'm just glad that we're continuing to be able to offer that. And I'm sure you do it, but just as a point of clarification, I'm sure that employees are given this information, so they're very well aware that they have this opportunity particularly in this time.
Yes, ma'am, and I do appreciate you acknowledging that. The Employee Assistance Program is one that we have had for a long time, and it affords every employee in Okaloosa County 4 free sessions to receive counseling for a variety of issues, not just stress, everything
Right.
from domestic situations through substance abuse all the way through emotional stress, those types of things. And we do advertise this in our monthly wave. It's been in several. I can't recall if it's in this most recent one, but we do periodically remind them. And of course, the principals have this information on their desks so that we can, do on-time interventions when they become aware of situations in there. We'll continue to do that. We do it through our risk management wellness program as well. So there's a variety of different avenues that we make the employees aware of this, but we're always seeking to do better with that as well.
And I also want to point out that when an employee takes advantage of this service, there's no record by the school district. There's nothing that would in any way breach that confidentiality. So no one's taken names of who's going and using these services as far as our district.
You're
So it can
correct.
be totally confidential, and they feel free to be able to go to that.
100%. We just make them aware of the service and what they do with that once we make them aware of it upon their request, or if we notice something that requires that we maybe make that recommendation. But after that conversation, it's between them and the counselors.
Great, thank you.
And might I add just a couple of comments about that, Ms. Vanchek? When one sees an item like this on the agenda, we often think work-related. But that's not always the case, because our employees, of course, like all of us, deal with human issues, whether it be family situations or whether it be grief or whatever it might be that they just need some help with. This program affords them an opportunity to get that kind of help that they might need in just that moment, and it might not at all be associated with their duties and their job. Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. This is just a service that we provide at the district for them to receive counseling on anything that they need from every venue and every walk of life to any situation that they may encounter, because we do care about our employees beyond just the workplace.
That's right.
And one of the things I am very proud of course, many things of our district, is that we do take care of our employees. I'm proud of our risk management process, our insurance, and this is just another way that we are, because we can't help our students if our employees are not well and everything. So this is a good thing. Thank you
Yes,
for that
ma'am.
clarification.
So now, I did 8.17, 8.18, school improvement plans for Okaloosa County School District's Department of Juvenile Justice Facilities, Crestview Youth Academy, and Okaloosa Youth Academy. 8.19, curriculum and instruction math course adoptions for the 2021 through 2022 school year. And then 8.20, request to appropriate No Child Left Behind curriculum specialist. Now we're to section 9, superintendent's human resource recommendations. The first two items will be informational only on Monday night. 9.1, employees on administrative leave. 9.2, deferred retirement option program drop. 9.3, cleared certification requirements and issuance of contracts for the 2021 through 2022 school year. 9.4, add a field report for the 2021 through 2022 school year. 9.5, employment separations. 9.6, personnel recommendations. 9.7, employee transfers. 9.8, reinstatement, reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty, illness, injury, medical examination. And then finally, 9.9, leave without pay.
Can I ask them about 9.8? Excuse me, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Can you tell me where we stand still on sick leave and related to COVID? Because we thought we were maybe, we were a little bit past that, but it seems we have had a little wave of that. And how are we still covering that for our employees?
Yes, ma'am. We actually entered into an agreement with the union that has not sunsetted, has not expired,
Okay.
Which affords them COVID leave and additional COVID leave under certain circumstances. So we are still assigning COVID leave in association with the categories that were in the original agreement. I can't remember the Coronavirus Response Act, whatever that official name was. we had a reduced amount of COVID leave approval coming into this year, reduced from 10 that the original act had back down to 5, which is still in place. It's been in place all year and it has not stopped.
So they have 5 days?
They have 5 COVID leave days with the option to extend it to another 5 days under certain circumstances,
Okay.
like a positive that extends their illness beyond
Right.
that. So we're still doing the best we can to take care of our employees in that regard.
I know, this just keeps hanging on, so, but thank you, that's good, thanks.
Item 10, Section 10, discussion agenda, item 10.1, items moved from the consent agenda, and at this time, nothing has been moved. So Section 11, construction program owners, representatives, business, and Dr. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, last meeting, we had our January construction committee report, and so we won't have another one until next month. So thank you for the opportunity, though.
Yes, ma'am. Section 12 is information technology seat management contract. We have nothing at this time. And Mr. McGinnis, your business, sir.
Just wanted to let the board know, since we're now in the new calendar year, we will start the next round of policy review and revisions under your board policy. So we will, this calendar year, be working on policies beginning with Chapter 6, and we'll be doing another 5 chapters throughout this year. And that's on top of the other amendments and changes that come along to other policies due to legislative session results and things of that nature, but we will get another full 5 chapters done this year. We completed 1 through 5 last year.
And Mr. Attorney, and Mr. Bryant, under my business, toward the end here, I'll have a couple of questions about this. But I believe the review that you're talking about, is that what we have done in response to the recommendation from the OPAGA report, where we go through?
Yes, sir. In fact, there was a recommendation there that we have a more formalized way in which to ensure the review of all of our policies over a period of time. Okay. We've always reviewed them and revised them and kept them updated, but in response to that, the board adopted a new policy revision policy, and you set out a chart and a calendar for how we would do that, and we're under the first cycle of that, but we're in year 2 now, and following the board's policy for the complete review and revision of 5 full chapters of that policy book over a 3-year cycle.
Okay. And so for those that might say or might think that we haven't seriously considered the OPAGA report that we were compelled to do before the voters thankfully and gratefully passed the half-cent sales tax, this is pure evidence that in fact we have addressed the report, and this is an example that you just spoke about, and we appreciate that, Mr. McInnes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir? Mr. McGinnis?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So now we'll go down to Section 14, Superintendent's Business, 14.1, out-of-state student trip request. And Mr. Chambers, I apologize, I didn't mention this beforehand, but just real quick, when we go out of state, there was some talk the other day on social media about the way things are done in Florida versus the way things are done in other states. And one of them, of course, was the masking issue. So can we please maybe say out there that whenever we go somewhere else out of state, that we are bound to follow the rules and regulations of whatever those states, municipalities. So whether we do it here in Florida, if we go to New York or California or somewhere, we are bound to their rules and laws out there.
No, absolutely. And one of the first questions that we ask when our folks are going anywhere out of state is you need to know specifically the requirements of the venue that you're going to. And understand those requirements. So absolutely, we follow whatever the requirements are by the state or the venue.
All right, so now I'll turn it over to you for your report today, and I understand it's going to be a great report, so looking forward to it.
Well, we'll see if it's great, but I
A very informative report.
Yes, sir. And I do want to just say from the beginning, we're at a time of the year where we are looking not only at where we are in this school year, but we're also looking at where we're going to be in the 2022 school year. So what I want to do is take an opportunity to share with you. You've heard about what we talk about, the next generation of Okaloosa schools, and we've talked about there's 6 pillars that is part of our vision, and that's academic excellence, continuous learning, being student-focused, having safer schools, modern innovation, and community engagement. And we've talked about those things, and I want to briefly share what normally takes about 30 or 40 minutes, but kind of share where we're going in those areas. But before I do, I also want to just to take a moment at this juncture in the school year to thank each and every one of you. Many folks may not know, throughout the week, you guys not only get calls from each and every senior staff member, where we're talking about items on the agenda or talking about just other forms of business. You get calls from district staff who inform you on certain things that are occurring, and you guys have dialogue about that. You all are talking to schools and helping with concerns or issues, and this is a board who also is in the schools. And I just wanted to say to you guys, absolutely appreciate what you guys do, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference with our principals. It makes a difference with our staff. I just want to start off by just thanking each and every one of you for that. And it plays a role in what I talk about the next generation of Okaloosa schools. We always talk about, and rightfully so, our teachers and the amazing work that they do, our educational support staff and the amazing work that they do, and our administrators. But our board members also play a role in being an A+ school district. And one of the things I want to reiterate as we talk about this next generation of Okaloosa schools and what comprises this A+ school district, and I always love to talk about 3 things, always, but we've added 2 others. First of all, academics is the main mission of why we're here, is to educate students, but then also the arts. You know, we have what I believe, arguably, is the strongest band, chorus, drama programs and others anywhere. And then also the athletics, and it's those 3 A's. But I also throw out there in this component career and technical education, which I'll talk about in a second, as well as STEM education. You know, these 5 components kind of drive what we do in Okaloosa County in terms of doing a good job for students and preparing them. But I do want to start with academic excellence. And academic excellence is not just about doing well on the FSA assessment, but it's also about, you know, preparing students for the SAT, preparing students for the ACT. It's also about making sure that we have a strong graduation rate. And we talked about that at the last meeting, where our graduation rate has gone up over the last number of years. So understanding that and understanding our role in terms of preparing students for college, the workforce, or the military is something that we take very seriously, and academic excellence is a part of that. But we also know that we want to challenge our students in AP programs, in IB programs, in ACE programs, and in dual enrollment. And these programs not only give our kids a rigorous challenge in terms of those courses, and many of them there's college credit that's associated with it, but again, when our students go to college or the military workforce, but particularly colleges, they want to know, did students take some of the most rigorous courses at their schools? And by providing them that's a big piece to making sure that we have academic excellence. Then you look at career and technical education. The career and technical education courses that I took when I was in high school, and maybe you as well, is vastly different today. And we've talked about this. Carpentry, not only are they cutting and building, but they're doing layout plans, they're doing architecture, they have very sophisticated equipment. So this is part of that academic excellence. But we have over 24 programs in Okaloosa County in career technical education. Then you also look at cybersecurity. You look at emergency medical responders. You look at what we're about to go into in terms of artificial intelligence. We're making sure that we have a diverse opportunity, or an opportunity for courses for our students that also relate to our local business force. Because we want to have students who have the ability to gain skills here in our schools and then translate them into our local economy. All of this is part of that academic excellence that we could go even further on. But then you go to continuous learning. And we want to be a school district where obviously our kids are about that, but we also want that for our employees, whether that's the teachers, whether that's the principal, whether that's maintenance and facilities. You know, we're working on getting better in everything that we do. And are we perfect? Absolutely not. But professional development is a big part of that. In 2022, as we go forward, getting back to the professional development model that we've been used to, where COVID's kind of hampered the ability to do the professional development that we would like to do. So that will be a big push as we go forward next year. Also looking at doing an even better job in terms of differentiating our professional development for our teachers and staff. We know what a first-year teacher needs is much different than a veteran teacher. We want to make sure that we have opportunities for teachers to get into other teachers' classrooms. We were doing a lot of that, but that's been kind of pulled back right now. But not only getting into classrooms of your own school, but getting in classrooms across schools where teachers can collaborate. We want to have a culture of collaboration amongst our teachers. We have some of the best anywhere, and if we can talk and share amongst each other, that's going to be a huge benefit for us. And then we're also looking at an administrator leadership program as well. Again, I'd throw our administrators up against anybody, but having a strong training program for those who want to get into administration, for our assistant principals who are already an administrator and want to grow to be a principal, and continuing to meet the needs of our principals and support them. So that's something that we'll be working through as well. When you move to being that third pillar of student-focused, mental health is something that we are really focusing on. And we've talked before where each year we are increasing the number of mental health counselors in Okaloosa County, and that's important. We have other itinerants who support that mental health push as well, such as guidance counselors like we've talked about. But what you will see being developed over the course of this second semester going into next school year is we'll be looking at a more comprehensive mental health program. One of those components is going to be a professional development that is being created. They're actually even working right now as we speak. There's a group that's come together, and one of the pieces is we want to make sure that we're making connections with students who might be struggling. And they might be struggling for various reasons, So as educators who do a good job being able to see some of these students who are struggling and really making those connections with those students. So that'll be a big push as we go into next year. Also, we are creating a mental health campaign, so to speak. And you're going to see videos that are going to be created. You're going to see posters that are going to be created, trainings that are going to be created around what is mental health and removing any stigma that might be there for those who might be struggling with mental health. And there's people that we walk across each and every day that we don't necessarily realize they're struggling. You know, people, especially nowadays, there's certain things that are within them. So us to do an even better job at what is mental health is something that we're working on as well. Suicide prevention, continuing to stay on that. Dr. Kelly has strong leadership with our Hope Squad and what we have here, and Peggy Brockman as well, keeping that going. Every secondary school in Okaloosa County will be a Hope Squad school by the end of this year. And then next year, every elementary school being a Hope Squad school as well. We know that we just received an Impact 100 grant of over $100,000 from folks in our community who also believe in this program and understand the importance of it. And it's something that we're so extremely grateful for. And if we save one life, then this whole program has already been successful. And then we also have to look at, in terms of being student-focused, we have to look at behavior supports. These last 2 years, you definitely see an increase of different behaviors in schools. And since the time public education has occurred, you've had a student who misbehaves, right? Since the time of public education. Nowadays, there's more.
Might have been one of those.
Yeah. I know I visited the principal's office a couple times or more. But nowadays, students are struggling with even more outside factors. And so the way that we handle behaviors, we have to even take a different approach. So we'll continue looking at our PBIS schools, putting positive behavior supports in there. That doesn't mean taking away consequences. That doesn't mean being less in tune with what's going on. But we have to be able to kind of teach the behaviors that we expect and then hold students accountable to those expectations. So continuing with that. And then for our students with disabilities, still within the student-focused area, students with disabilities, there's a number of things that are going on, but one of the things that we will be looking at is Orton Gillingham curriculum, and it's dealing with reading for our ESE resource teachers. We know right now that dyslexia is something that's becoming even more prevalent, and continuing to focus on that, but being very specific with this Orton Gillingham curriculum, where we can help our ESE resource teachers and obviously our ESE students, is something that we're going to really ratchet up even more so next year. And then we have a number of teachers right now that are going through a certification that's called Autism Spectrum Disorder Endorsements. So that's a focus within our ESE department, having more and more of our ESE teachers get these endorsements so we can do even more to help our students who have autism and really succeed, get those students in the gen ed classes as well and help them succeed. So that's a push. And stop me at any time. Going to that fourth pillar, looking at safer schools. We've always talked about if our schools aren't safe, then all this is for naught. It's the number one priority. We have a Safe Schools office in our county. Danny Dean heads that up. He does a great job. But I want to say that we are continuing our strong partnership with the Sheriff's Office, with our School Resource Officer program. Every school in Okaloosa has a School Resource Officer. Our schools that go through grade 12 have 2. That's a big piece to what we do, and they do a fantastic job. We still have the guardianship program here in Okaloosa County. So that is a layer of support for our schools. We'll be looking at key card access as we go into the future. Right now, to get in, you got to get buzzed in because we have single point of entry. But going into the future as well, there'll be key card access even at the classroom level as we go forward. Looking at our camera systems and our communication systems, continuing to upgrade those technological pieces which are integral in keeping our schools safe and making sure that we have the ability to report things that need to be reported. If, heaven forbid, we ever had to go into lockdown, it's now easier than it's ever been to be able to go into lockdown and do things right away. We had a situation this past week where we had to go into a lockout. And again, that communication is critical between school resource officers, administrators, and teachers and staff to where things can happen instantaneously. So that communication is imperative. And then also continuing the emphasis on safety drills. That's something that we can't relax on. We have to be prepared. And then at the district level, we're continuing our focus on the district's response if in fact we ever had to respond to a crisis. And that's what Mr. Horton and Danny Dean head up for us. So that's the Safer Schools component of where we're going. Then you look at modern innovation. We've talked about focus and transitioning into the 21st century away from terms AS400. Eric Mitchell and his staff and Mr. Horton and his staff, they've had constant meetings and making sure that we are as prepared as we can be for this transition in the 2022 school year. This is a student platform, this is a financial platform, this is an HR platform. So taking everything that we have, migrating over, it's a monumental task that's been happening throughout the first semester and will continue to happen throughout the second semester. Teachers will have trainings in the second semester. We're creating videos. There'll be training in the summer as well, because as you can imagine, being a teacher, especially that grade book, how am I going to utilize that grade book? So that is a big focus as we go forward. Also, capital projects, we're starting to see more of those happen in terms of modern innovation. The half-cent sales tax has really helped us do some of the much-needed work around our schools. We now have a school bus replacement program, not just buying a bus or two. Now we're buying buses. As we know, we had 40 already arrived. We have 20 that will be arriving. That's a third of our fleet, and we'll continue each year as we go into the 2022 school year, having a certain amount of money for buses for this upcoming school year. So that's exciting to be able to do that.
Can I ask a question about
Yes,
those
ma'am.
buses? So these are all modern buses with air conditioners, seat belts, and cameras.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And a lot
Thanks.
of reflector tape on it.
Yes, yes. And you can definitely tell the difference between the new bus rolling down the street
And the older
and
ones.
some of our older buses.
Yeah, even the paint's a little different.
And Mr. Horton just reminded me that it also has, these new buses have radios and speaker systems
Yeah, that's good.
within them as well.
Yeah, good.
Turn around and yell.
That's good.
As we go forward into next year and into the years as well, in terms of modern innovation, we've talked about this. New school construction is something that we have to look at. We are going through the process of still trying to acquire land, so that's part of a process so we can be ready when the time comes to start that process. So that is something that we're very mindful of. And then lastly, when you start looking at staffing shortages in terms of modern innovation, and I'll just say this, one of the things that we're talking about just internally is how do we think outside the box? I don't have all the specifics for you prepared to say at this time, but how do we think outside the box in terms of helping ourselves and helping our employees with some of these staffing shortages? Shifting on over to community engagement, that last pillar, we want to be as engaged with our community as possible. Whether that's our service groups such as Rotary and Kiwanis and others, whether that's with our Chamber of Commerce's. We want to make sure that we're a part of our community. As you know, we try to give out information to our parents in terms of the Catch the Wave. We're giving board highlights to parents and to community members so they can see what's happening here in our board meetings. So trying to be as transparent as we can, connecting. Strong partnership with our militaries and continuing to keep that engagement going, and having a strong social media post so they can see the different types of activities that are happening at the school level especially, but also the district level. So that is a quick rundown of the 6 pillars in terms of our school district, where we're going. We're getting ready to start this budget process for the upcoming school year, and definitely as you talk to staff, as you talk with me, thoughts that you have for this upcoming school year, definitely want to be able to hear that as well. So before I go any further, any comments or questions?
Well, I wanted to comment, the last thing you're talking about is community engagement, and you talked about social media, and I think I could say for sure that this board is more socially media active than any board in the history of this school district. All of us post in always a very positive way the things that are going on, not only in the district but in schools. And so I think the public's getting more information than ever about what's happening with our schools and school district, and particularly in a positive way of all those great things you're just talking about, where we're going. So I think that's excellent, and I think all of those are. I don't think people realize all the different avenues you have to approach in running a school district in so many areas and levels. But you hit on all those wonderfully, and I hope that gives them an idea of where we are at this point. Thank you.
And I could add that one thing struck me when you were talking about we're engaging our students intellectually, not just to pass an FSA. So when I was working with curriculum, I used to use the term cognitive confidence. And I think that's an important term, which you alluded to, because we're teaching our students not just to problem solve for a test, but to problem solve in real life. So we are giving them those skills so that whenever they attach a problem, or attack a problem rather, whether it's on paper or whether it's something that they acquire in college or on the career field or in daily life, just interacting with other people, they have that ability and that knowledge and that experience, that background that's been provided to them in the classroom to attack that problem appropriately.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Well, just a couple of things, and Superintendent, I appreciated the State of the Union address. It was excellent. It's a great report, and we might need to make that a part of the regular agenda because it was very good and very informative. Just a couple of things that I noted in your comments. I appreciate so much what you said about CTE, and Ms. Vanchek was talking about social media, and I know you've all seen that meme or whatever they call it, where they put on there, bring back shop. And I just want to say that CTE is shop and more, much, much, much more. And then also the focus on mental health. And Mr. McInnes, you've been our lawyer for a long, long time. And that's sort of kind of new, isn't it, really? I mean, all the years way back when I was working and you were lawyering up here, I don't remember a lot of talk from the school board or the superintendent about mental health. What are your recollections about that? Is that accurate?
No, certainly the emphasis and focus is much greater today, and that's coming even from the state legislature, the Department of Education, providing that impetus and in some cases those resources. But the increase of the mental health counselors actually being in schools certainly is a new era in mental health for students in the school community.
And it's a new undertaking for our teachers and our principals, and it's you never really want to call particularly something like that an add-on, but it really is. I mean, it's a whole nother area that heretofore we really never had to deal with like we do now. But we recognize that absolutely, like you said, it's real and something that we do have to attend to. So anyway, I appreciated those remarks very, very much, and thank you. Good report.
And Dr. White, to follow up on the mental health aspect of it, it's such a huge deal, especially in this legislative session, that the Florida School Board Association and the superintendents, it's one of their high priorities for funding, properly funding mental health programs within the school districts at a state level. So,
Big change.
We also are addressing not only our students, but also our employees with the program that Dr. Hale discussed earlier. So we do have to look at the big picture, all of it, our students and also our employees, all of our employees.
And if I could make one more remark, I appreciate you talking about our employees as far as the concern of having enough employees to cover everything. I think everybody knows I grew up here and had my teaching career here, and when I was wanting a job in this district, I was praying for it. I was so excited to get that call to say, we're going to hire you, because it was very competitive. We're a great district, and that hasn't changed. The other surroundings have changed in that we're dealing with. Not that we aren't offering wonderful things for our employees and the support, but the world has changed. The education profession has changed, and we're looking at that. And so those days of having a vast pool of employees in which to interview and to come into our district on all levels, whether it be a bus driver to someone wanting to get into administration, it's just not there. And that's not an Okaloosa unique problem. That is not only a Florida problem, but a national problem. But it is, I think, in a way, and I hope it'll be taken in the spirit I mean it, that in a way we've gotten a little spoiled living in Okaloosa County, that we had those citizens coming to be employed here that we just can't afford to do anymore. And so I'm glad to see that it's on your agenda to look and take some action, because I know that you and I have had conversations about not only employee satisfaction and feeling that they're getting what they need in professionalism, but also the lack of those employees coming. I mean, you have things, Tricia, you're going to have people retire, you're going to have people leave the profession for other reasons, but it seems that has taken a lot of focus, kind of like mental health in the last few years, that we've not had to deal with. So I appreciate that has hit on your agenda as something to really take an active role in getting not only the employees we have now, but that's something we're all looking at. How do we get those people to come, particularly those ones coming out of college, right to our district and serve with us? So I'm eager to hear what plans we can come up with in the future, which I think all of us have to work to that to get those plans together, and no one has the magic answer.
I appreciate that. And it's actually a great segue also in terms of, I shared with you that Mr. Bryant just alluded to it as well. I shared with you last board meeting that we are going to be sending our local legislators the 4 areas that superintendents across the state have identified as areas that we want to push. And again, that was mental health, that was staff shortages, that was the impact of minimum wage, and school security. And I was going to elaborate on the staffing shortages. I'm glad Ms. Ivanchek just mentioned this. And I just want to say this. We know right now we can go down the street to a fast food restaurant or to a restaurant. We can go to any place of business right now, and many folks, not all, many folks are short-staffed. And I just want to thank our parents for their understanding in areas where we are short-staffed. Very much want to thank our teachers, our support professionals, and our administrators and our substitutes who are going above and beyond right now, filling in places where we are short-staffed. But there is an impact of being short-staffed. There is. Whether that's on the bus, where buses are arriving maybe to school a little bit later than they normally would, or kids are getting home later than they normally would. So I appreciate us having the bus app that notifies families when things are going to be late, and just encourage families who have a student who rides the bus, if you do not have the bus app, to get the bus app. But again, I just appreciate the patience of families and our schools during these staff shortages. And I wanted to shift to the Teacher of the Year banquet. As you know, the Teacher of the Year banquet, it will be next Tuesday. Next Tuesday. And one of the things I'm so proud of is how this community supports our schools and our teachers and our administrators and staff. I made a phone call to a few different companies. Step One Automotive, Bit Wizards, and Talking Points, Florida Power and Light, which was Gulf Power, the Bank of England Mortgage, Eglin Federal Credit Union, and Teleforce. And they are covering the entire cost of the Teacher of the Year banquet for the first time. So none of our teachers, administrators, will have to pay that cost. And
Awesome.
How supportive these individuals were that I just mentioned, where they went above and beyond to help us do this, because they understand, from what they shared with me, just the importance of our teachers and educators and the difference that the school district makes in the lives of our students and this community. So just couldn't be more grateful to this group. Many of them will be at the Teacher of the Year banquet with us in supporting our teachers that night. The last thing I will say is we are very much paying attention to COVID. Do want to say that. It's absolutely true right now that we do have higher numbers than we did the first semester. And when I say the first semester, towards the end of the first semester. If we look at where we were at the start of the school year, we're not necessarily to that point yet, but our numbers have risen in January. So we are paying attention to those numbers. We continue to put those numbers on our website. So I want to be very transparent with those. We get those numbers from the Department of Health. So we are tracking that. We do have test kits. So we know that there are families where it's very difficult to get a test. So our schools do have test kits, and our schools are giving those test kits out to families and employees who need them. So I think that's an important piece. We do have the voluntary vaccinations at the elementary level, because we've already done it at the secondary level. So now it's at the elementary level as well. And at these voluntary sites, employees can actually get vaccinated if they choose to do so as well. I'm very hopeful from what the experts say that hopefully we'll be getting past this peak here soon and starting the downturn. But I think I would be remiss to say, if I didn't mention it, the work that is occurring at the schools during these difficult times. You go back 2 years ago, we would have never dreamed that we would be doing the things that we're doing today. And teachers, again, our staff professionals, our principals, district staff, what we are doing now to get through this pandemic, again, I just couldn't be prouder for the hard work that's occurring. And that's all I have today.
I have a follow-up, Mr. Bryan, if you wouldn't mind, Superintendent. I just so much appreciate you speaking about the test kits that are available, because we all know, and everyone knows, I think, that that's a way to limit the scope of contagion. If we can allow folks to see if in fact they have COVID, well then they can initiate the protocols about not going to school or not going to work and doing all those kinds of things. And for the rest of us in the community, finding a test kit right now is not real easy. And although I was able to find a couple on the Walmart site, I don't mind saying that. But anyway, I think that's very important, and I appreciate you guys doing that, because again, that's a way for folks to help us limit contagion in our schools.
Thank you, Dr. White. And thank you, Mr. Chambers, for that great report. See, I told you it was a great report.
It was.
Nice, very good.
You're right. So we'll go to board members' announcements and requests for information, and I will start with my Vice Chair, distinguished colleague, Dr. Diane Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, lots of good news in the Eagle territory. 16 Eagles made the All-State Chorus and 8 Eagles made All-State Band. And recently, the Niceville High School dance team won 2 state championships. They were in hip-hop and in small varsity jazz. So I believe now this makes the seniors who performed on that dance team their 5th state titles. So congratulations to those dancers, their coaches, and their parents who, no doubt, like I once did, sat through many, many hours of practice and cheered those dancers on. I would like to just say that a reminder that the science fair will be at the Northwest Florida State Fairgrounds, available for public viewing on Thursday, February the 2nd from 9:30 to noon, and the awards will be February the 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Beachside Community Church. And I wanted to say also again, congratulations to Julie Perry and her team for a financial audit that made us all proud. And again, I'll say to all who will listen, there were no material findings, nothing to be alarmed about. All good. Thank you, Julie. And please pass those kudos along to your team. We do appreciate you. And just finally, for my colleagues, there are approximately 82 school days left till the last day for students in the end of the second semester, but only 40 days until spring break.
Okay.
40 school days, so lots to look forward to.
Always love that, you put the emphasis on only. And it just
Only.
seems-
That's right. Something to give hope.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Dr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of, I guess you might say, information requests or comments to make. And first of all, I'd like to just say that for school news, that all the folks in District 1 to please check the school websites, because they do a great job providing all the information regarding students and successful activities. But my first information request, Superintendent, pertains to an area I believe that would fall under Mr. Horton's jurisdiction. And I wondered if he might approach. I have spoken to him about this. Just for a moment, Mr. Chair, with your
Yes, sir.
permission.
That is, well, Mr. Chambers just did.
Mr. Horton, you know, my question pertains to the half-cent sales tax and a report that we were compelled to do prior to putting that out as a referendum for our citizens to vote on. And I believe that report was issued by the OPAGA group with agents that were under their employ. and it was a performance audit of our school district. And while there may have been some that have spoken that we might not have given that report the proper attention that it deserved, I'm wondering if you might speak to that, and in addition, maybe give us an update with the chairman's permission on where we are with the OPAGA report and some of the suggestions that they made. They weren't things that we were required to do. They were often suggestions. And so I'm wondering if you might speak to that, and then maybe with the superintendent's permission, the chair's already given permission, you might approach again at a later date and give us a complete update.
Yes, sir. I think that'd be appropriate as well. So as you mentioned earlier, the OPAGA audit is a requirement for all school districts who are entertaining a referendum question with regard to half-cent sales tax, and Okaloosa being one of the last districts in the state of Florida to pursue that request of citizens, went through that process. And if you recall, we went through that process, I believe, in the summer of 2020, in the midst of a school shutdown and COVID. So it was different by some degree than the OPAGA audit that some other districts went through. Alachua had previously gone through one. We had a firm that was contracted by the Department of Education and through the OPAGA process out of Texas. And so that OPAGA audit was conducted virtually in all forms. So normally the folks come to the campus and sit down and have meetings. So it was a challenging process from the beginning, but something that we took seriously. And you're right. I think we reported at the time that finding, the report came back to the board. It has been posted on our website ever since as required, previous or prior to the referendum question, so the voters had a chance to review. I think we reported at that time that of 6 indicated areas that they reviewed, there were no areas where the district did not meet expectations. There were some where we partially met, there were some where we met, and so as Dr. White said, there are recommendations that come from that OPAGA group that a district could consider implementing or evaluating as we move forward. One of those was already mentioned earlier today, was a process to formalize by policy, reviewing our own school district policies. And so as we know, we do that as the legislative session ends each year. We quickly go and look at the new policies that need to be implemented as a result of that. So this is really a second look at that, more documented look of something we've already done. There are other things that were considered in recommendations in the audit piece. One of them, and I'm not going to speak to every single one today. I'll give you an example that one of them, again, I think because of some of the unique ways in which Okaloosa County operates, and I'll talk about that, but one of the findings was about our bleacher repair. And I think you will know that probably if you looked throughout Florida, we're probably one of the only districts that has put in a second layer of review of our stadiums annually as opposed to every 2 years. And so prior to OPAGA coming, we had done that. And so they gave us a recommendation about documenting and making sure we had something in writing that the bleacher repair was made. So we would go out and review and inspect, and we have engineers who to inspect our stadiums and make sure the work's done, but there was something in writing that OPAGA recommended that we have to document that. So that's something we put in place.
So we're doing that in response?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are other pieces out there. Several involved analyzing the impact of an aging bus fleet on our transportation program. And so we obviously have documented the oldest bus fleet in the state of Florida. Some of the recommendations spoke to our TPM program and ensuring that we know and have a method for determining that our pricing that we receive on our projects is appropriate and it's validated. And so that was an area where when we talked to that group about our TPM process and that contracted service of ours, that those folks are obligated to do RFPs for all of their project work. So it's all competitively based and market-based. The other thing that we tried to share with that group was the validation that we do on all of our projects that'll be under the half-cent sales tax, the construction projects through the Faithful and Gould price validation. So this is it's unique to some extent in Florida.
And I'd like to make a comment
Yeah.
regarding that. Let me just say it this way. Texas school law is far different than Florida school law. And I think you said this group was from Texas?
They were.
Right.
And so some of the responses and to the recommendations are identifying those things that we have in place and clarifying them, because I know Dr. Smith could attest to the fact that we spend a lot of time on Zoom with them and understanding how our TPM program works and how our seat management program works. And so that was an area that we knew that there were things that would come out that there were recommendations. So we are looking at each of those. And obviously, this past year, having been a COVID year, to continue to make decisions and changes to the way we do things, if we think it's to the betterment of the students and staff and financial situation in Okaloosa County, those are the things that we'll push to continue to work on.
Awesome. So you might be able to come in and,
Yes, sir.
and talk with us specifically about suggestions by OPAGA and their hired group that we've made.
Yes, sir.
Or accommodated.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Bryan, I think that would be good. I think it would help clear up some of that social media confusion that some of you have spoken about already today.
So, Mr. Chambers, at the direction with Dr. White's request, let's look at maybe in our second meeting in February, getting something where we can have a dedicated section.
Absolutely.
And this today already helped significantly, I think, with clearing up some of that confusion being generated in social media.
The other thing that I'll point to, just because it was a kind of a keystone piece, is our school website right now, our district website has a capital program dashboard.
Yes.
And so with our TPM, we've got every school in that program, every school's project list, estimated costs for all of those, and progress on those as we move forward. So we're keeping that up to date. So that's part of what was recommended through OPAGA. We've got that implemented.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Horton. Thank you, Mr. Bryan. I have one more item.
Yes, sir.
And we've already spoken about some of the social media issues, and you know how it is. If I read it in social media, it must be true. And I know that there's been some recent discussion about some felony arrests that we've had in the school district. And board members, you all know, and the public all knows that those have actually even been in the media. They've been in the press, not just social media. And so I was hoping that Mr. McInnes might take just a moment to further educate me and maybe even the public and those that make such erroneous posts regarding how it is that we are, I guess you would say, compelled or required to handle felony arrest of our employees. Would you do that for a moment?
Certainly. That process typically starts by us getting notice through typically the sheriff's department that there has been an arrest of one of our employees at that felony level. And they are diligent about ensuring that they make those calls when that happens. When that occurs, the superintendent, his authority is to suspend with pay that employee immediately based upon that arrest. And then he brings a recommendation to the school board at your next regular meeting that would be to suspend that employee without pay pending the outcome of those criminal proceedings.
All right, so may I ask a question here, sir? So when a felony arrest occurs and we're notified, the superintendent then suspends that person with pay. Now, if I remember correctly, I think that's required by Florida law.
And that's the legal limit on what he can do at that point is to suspend with pay until the next regular board
We have no
meeting.
choice on that. And even if we thought we had a choice or wanted a choice, the law is specific regarding that.
Right, and then what I will tell you that sometimes, on a rare occasion, the arrest may happen on a weekend or at the end of a day, like a Friday. And if you're meeting on Monday, we may very well skip through the first process of suspension with pay and just process immediately for the board the suspension without pay recommendation, so we don't lose another
So-
2-week window.
Okay, so I have a question about that. So when it comes to us, if it's possible, we do it immediately at the next workshop. It might be on a next, board meeting. It might have happened on Saturday, and we could follow up on a Monday if we were meeting. And you said at that point, we suspend them without pay. Is that in accordance with Florida law?
Yes, sir, and that's the authority of the board to suspend without pay.
Okay, and so that's how that part works. All right, so I get that. All right, what else? Is there anything else?
And at that point, depending upon the nature of what the arrest and the ultimate charges are, the district then coordinates through its investigative division an investigation, if appropriate, along with the sheriff's department, state attorney's office, law enforcement. We do not interfere with their investigations, and we allow them to take the lead there. We follow their lead. Our investigators keep up with them on a parallel basis, but are not interfering. And at the appropriate time, we'll kick in the investigation that we may need to pursue. Once again, it depends upon the charges. Some things that are completely outside of the district, criminal conduct that has nothing to do with the district, there'd be a different kind of review or investigation on our part. If it in any way related to the district, we would then be preparing an investigation of ourselves so we can make a decision, because you have to understand the decision on employment ultimately is an entirely different decision than the court system is making on whether or not a crime occurred, and if so, what level it's going to be punished at, and those kind of things. So we keep in our lane with what we're focusing on. That would be any impact on the employment of that individual under our policies, under state laws that we have to implement.
Well, I didn't mean to catch you off guard with the question and today when I told you I was going to ask you, but I very much appreciate that explanation. Now, I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to say this. You've been our school board lawyer now for how many years? Do you know?
Since 1990,
Okay, a long time. A long time.
almost 32 years.
And the reason I say that is that, and I know this, you're highly esteemed throughout Florida by other school boards, school board attorneys, and you've been awarded numerous accolades. Which leads me to my question. What would be your advice to school board members to comment on these matters, felony arrest of employees, when they first come to us?
Well, we have to consider what the role of the board member is going to be as that case moves along. We don't know the outcome of those cases. And because we don't know the outcome of the case when it starts, I think it is not prudent for school board members to begin commenting on what either may or may not have happened, what somebody's charged with or not charged with, because at some point on the personnel side of this matter, you could end up sitting here as a hearing body having to make a decision about that employee's future. In that event, you have to be a neutral party. You're in a quasi-judicial role in that situation. Now, you don't take on the mantle of that role as soon as an arrest is made, but there's a possibility down the line that you might, and therefore it's important for board members not to be out commenting on their personal opinions about whether someone did or didn't do something, or what they're even charged with, until those facts have been developed and it comes forward to you in a more formal manner. You don't want to lose your ability to do your job later.
To act in that capacity.
That's right.
But might it be true also that should we have commented or comment on those matters, that potentially we could expose the school district, the taxpayers, to some legal liability?
Well, certainly, because when these things first occur, none of us know how those facts are going to play out. And you've seen in all these years, Dr. White, that many times what starts out initially with a certain level of criminal charge is not what ends up in that system.
Right.
And so therefore, we want to be very careful and very professional in how we communicate anything publicly about those situations, because we need to give every agency their room and their latitude to do their job and to get the facts laid out correctly, and then to decide how these matters are going to be concluded. That's true for both the school system and for the judicial system and law enforcement. And based upon that, it's always been my advice that board members and the superintendent be very careful in public comments about these matters on the front end, because you could find yourself taking a hardline position on something, in the next 2 months, it turns around, it's not even what somebody thought it was.
Or the charges get dropped.
Right.
And so, for those that might have erroneously stated that we ought to be commenting on these things, there it is. There's the legal advice. And the most important thing I think that I can try to do is try to protect the taxpayers and protect the public from any kind of liability, especially that I might create.
And Dr. White, I believe that in our school board educational courses that we had to take when we were first sworn in as a board member, we were taught that we ought to behave with the most conservative of public decorum to best preserve our image as a board member.
And adding to Dr. White, and I think I know the social media that you're referring to, it also states that Okaloosa County, it appears that we have this huge uptick of individuals, teachers, employees being arrested, and it sounds like we're all falling apart. And I don't remember if I talked to Mr. McGinnis, or it might have been Dr. Hell, and because I was concerned again, because, people think that if it's on Facebook or
Right.
social media, it's got to be true.
Right.
But it's not necessarily that we have the large increase, and Dr. Hill, I think it was you, but it's maybe the way it's being reported with the not having, that with the transparency, that, okay, I'll talk to you too afterwards. Okay, I will.
Well-
But it's not that we're having a large number of employees, it's the way, and I think it had something to do with Mr. Chambers putting something in place so that now it is more public than it was in the past, as how it's being reported.
So I would just like to say this, and I'm going to ask Dr. Hale to say one thing as it pertains to background checks in a second. So in Okaloosa County, and I've said this before, the overwhelming percentage of our employees are doing the right thing
Absolutely.
each and every day.
Absolutely.
They wake up with the intent of how am I going to make a difference in the lives of kids. And like we've said publicly on many occasions, if we have an employee that does something inappropriate, that employee is going to be held accountable. I think a record would show
Yep.
Immediately.
that we've done that, and we've taken swift action. Again,
With every one of them.
with every one of them. So that is something that I think is important. But as there's some questions out there about background checks, so I want Dr. Hale to come up and to share. We actually have a very rigorous background check process. And Dr. Hale, if you don't mind sharing that process.
Sure. So we do a lot of different levels of background screening, first upon initial employment, and then periodically once someone is employed. Prior to employment, every applicant must, among other things, pass a fingerprint screening and criminal background check before accessing any of our sites, to include schools. That's also true not only of employees, but vendors, contractors, volunteers, in accordance with the Jessica Lunsford Act. So we have a very rigorous initial screening process. We utilize FieldPrint, which is a partner with the FBI. FieldPrint is actually authorized by the FBI and utilizes live scan fingerprinting that digitally scans and submits fingerprints directly to the FBI. And so I don't know if you have ever seen the digital print scanner, but the days of the old smudgy, potentially inaccurate fingerprint cards are gone. FieldPrint uses the digital scanner. Then the FBI enters the prints into a nationwide criminal records database, which FDLE is a part of that, and alerts us to any criminal activity, whether it's a conviction or even an arrest, associated with those prints across the nation. No applicant with a disqualifying criminal history is employed with the Okaloosa County School District. Also, anytime a current employee is arrested, since we are a part of that database and since all of our employees are then triangulated into that database and associated with us, if someone's arrested, we get what's called a hit. It appears in our office. We receive notifications directly from FDLE so we can act accordingly, but I'm going to say quite frankly that we, more times than not, know even earlier than that because of our friends at the Sheriff's Department, which we appreciate very much. They usually pick up the phone and call us directly. And then additionally, as a safeguard, every 3 years, whether we've gotten a hit on somebody or not, each employee is resubmitted to the FBI database as a fail-safe check. So a lot of fingerprint services, a lot of initial screening, and a lot of ongoing checks to ensure that our employees, we know exactly where they are, exactly what's going on, and that our children only have safe employees in front of them. Certainly, fingerprint scanner's not a crystal ball, but it is a way for us to react when we do find something out.
And a background check gives us the information at that real time, so whatever's given to us at that time is what we go with.
Right.
Because what an employee does after they're employed, or might be doing, if they have no criminal record on it, then we don't know anything.
Correct.
Something might pop up.
And right, and like I said earlier, the background screening doesn't just talk about convictions. We're even alerted to arrests before the fact that maybe have led to a reduction in charges, as Dr. White mentioned earlier, or even a drop charges or whatever. We have the ability to then take that record and then research what has occurred so that we can make a great decision on whether or not they're employable.
And just one more follow-up for Mr. McInnes, because we've talked about suspension and we've talked about with pay and without pay. I'm wondering if you might speak to what the law requires us to do. Should the charges be dropped or they be reduced from a felony to a different degree with an individual? What do we do then? What are we required to do with that person as far as them coming back to work and all those things?
And that is fact-specific, as you can imagine, for each case, but there are situations in which, at the end of that process, if the person is completely exonerated or the charges are completely dropped, there are provisions in the law then where we may have been a situation where there's a repayment to that individual of salary that was withheld while that matter was pending. Keeping in mind, once again though, we still have the ability to look at those situations from a school district policy and an educator ethics code situation to determine if we may still take action, even though some criminal matter, didn't turn out that way. But there is a potential out there that you could, be reinstating and reimbursing an employee based upon the nature of what happened.
Well, I'm so glad that you added that part about professional ethics and the fact that we do our own investigation and can have our own findings that may differentiate from what the criminal court system does.
Right.
Very important. That's all, Mr. Bryant. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, you're great. Great questions and great responses. So, all right.
And I just want to add that I want to thank Mr. McGinnis because we asked you to make a statement at our last board meeting prior to public comment to explain why sometimes, like you just did, we can't make a comment when someone comes to us and speaks. And I appreciate that because I can understand the confusion in the public that typically if something comes in front of you, you do comment and come back, but there are times that we just can't do that because of what you just said, and I appreciated that you would say that because some were interpreting that we were being just not caring about that situation or just allowing it, and that's not the case. And
Well,
so
you're more kind than I am, Ms. Vanchek. That was a deliberate misinterpretation for it to be presented that way, that we don't care or that we're not interested. That was deliberate, it was spurious, and frankly, it was wrong, and that's why I appreciate so much Mr. McInnes coming forward and based upon my questions and explaining what legal advice to us is. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just...
no, that's okay.
follow.
I appreciate that. I'm fine. I just wanted to thank him for doing that.
And I'll go ahead and let you do
Okay,
your comments.
all right, so I'm going to make it a little more pumped up and say I've been so honored to be on the Teacher of the Year committee, and last week I got to do something that I wish everyone could do, and that was to go into the classrooms of the 3 finalists for the Okaloosa County Teacher of the Year, and those finalists are Miss Brittany Tate at Pryor, Miss Amy Saxer at Bruner Middle School, and Miss Elizabeth Drake up at Walker. And I wish everyone had the benefit of getting to sit in these classes, and I'm sure many others in our district. It will, with all that we talk about and the challenges, It puts it back in focus on what we're doing and why we're doing it. And any of these professionals could be given this title, but we will find out who we had to ultimately select come Tuesday night. But it's exciting, and what they're doing in the classroom is just phenomenal. It's just wonderful. So I'm excited when we get to that Tuesday. The next thing is next week is Florida Literacy Week throughout the state. And it's, the theme is Launch into Literacy, and I've already talked with several schools that have some programs going and activities. Of course, literacy is what we do all the time, but it is this week that we focus on literacy with our students. Also want to congratulate Coach David Oglesby and the girls weightlifting team at Baker. Last night they were named district champs, and I'm very proud of them and all that they do, and appreciate Coach Oglesby and his staff for their dedication. So that's what I have. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you, ESSER funds. Do we have to wait till the legislature comes out of session to find out if we're approved or not, or are they going to do that and put us out of our misery sometime sooner so that we can actually use those funds?
So that's the million-dollar question. So my most recent update, I think it was about a week and a half ago, is it looks like the Department of Education has cleared our ESSER 3 process. So they were good with what we put.
Right.
Now it goes to a group within the legislature that at that time, a week and a half ago, said in about 2 weeks, we should hear, I'll say what I was told, a favorable outcome based on what our ESSER 3 application looks like. So I am waited, I'll even say with bated breath, on getting word here, hopefully in the next week. I know I get emails about that ESSER 3 grant, but we're hopeful that we're right around the corner. What was also shared is that we are in the first batch to be looked at. And I say that because we were prepared on that very first day to submit our ESSER 3 grant application, which we did, which puts us in a good position right now to hopefully get that approval.
Yeah, what you're saying, bottom line is Okaloosa did what they were supposed to do, and your staff, and we turned it in, and others didn't, but we got held back because those others didn't, okay? And so we're having to sit here and wait, which is a legislative thing, which brings me to one thing I want to tell the public is that don't just rely on us to contact the legislature. Those people are elected for all the people. So you have concerns about public education or things you want, contact your legislators. They're down there. That's what they're getting paid to do. That's what they chose to serve to do. And so they pull the strings on mostly of what we do. So be a proactive citizen and let them know what you think's important here for your students in Okaloosa County. I'll get off that box and go.
And Ms. Carter.
I'll keep mine short, but we recognized our top 3 ed support last Friday. I'm going to let Mr. Strong, Patrick Strong, announce that. I don't want to take his thunder away. However, Mr. Chambers, you were mentioning our community that is stepping up and supporting our employees, and I've been speaking with Joel Linder with L3, and L3 is going to sponsor the breakfast this year so that our ed support individuals will not have to pay. And I believe L3 did it last year, and they're going to again support our breakfast. That's going to be the first week in February. Also, I am, again, talking about recognition, looking forward to Monday night. It's been a while since we've been able to have people in and recognize our outstanding employees, individuals. So I'm looking forward to Monday night, recognizing those. And again, to Ms. Perry, please pass on to your team, your finance. I know that when we, and I'm listening to the board, when we received the audit, we read it, saw that we had some areas that we needed to address, and by the time I was able to talk to you and it sounded like the others, you were already on top of it. We own it, we don't hide things, we address it, and we look to improve. So thank you and your team, and please pass that on. That's all.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carter. And finally, as the school board representative to FISBIT, we had our quarterly meeting last week, and I do have some information I'd like to share with y'all from Sniffen and Spellman. They made a presentation, so there's some things on here I think y'all would find interesting. So anytime I go to these things, I'd love to bring it back and share with y'all.
I think it's just one.
Yes.
Yep, here we go. Mr. Chambers, I just need one more. Okay, that's
Mr. McGinnis can.
Yeah, he's got one. We're good here.
Have one.
She needs
That-
one.
Do you have one more?
No, that's yours. Yeah, Mary.
She can have this one, she needs it.
But anyway, so it was a great meeting, but I do want to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Chambers for a request that I made a couple of months ago regarding our risk management program. And I understand that at our next workshop, we should have a report from Russ that will actually be on there and talk about the importance of why we are putting an emphasis on risk management and the benefits of being a part of the Florida School Board Insurance Trust and the things that we do with them to help our district in the risk management piece of doing your job, being able to do your job every day. So looking forward to that. And also with the legislature high in gear right now, school board members, I will tell you that once again, we're a target.
Imagine that.
So.
That's every year.
That's every year, but I would encourage you, and I know all of y'all do your part, like Ms. Ivanchuk said, with all the legislative things that are going on out there, that we're focused on the things that are important to education, and of course, mental health, properly funding education, safety, security. These are things that are important to us, and I know the governor has really put an emphasis on a lot of those programs, so hoping this year will be a good year for those measures and properly funding the things that are critical to schools these days. But I would encourage you to take a look and see what's going on. I know February 3rd and 4th is legislative days for school board members in Tallahassee, so if you're able to get over there, it's our day to be able to go there and talk to the representatives from around the state. And with that, we'll go down to section 16 and public comment. 16.1, members of the public desiring to address the school board, and this is the 2-minute version of public comment. And I'll go around the room real quick. Dr. Hale, anything? Mr. Horkins? Ms. Perry?
Okay, hold on a minute, don't adjourn yet. I'd like to say you're talking about our representative for FISBIT and different things, but also, Mr. Bryan, I want to, I'm sure the board wants to congratulate you because you recently got a professional designation as a board member down in I'm assuming Tallahassee, and then Gainesville was the thing. But if you want to explain that, and congratulations for your commitment to this board and to the profession.
Well, thank you very much, and I was just recognized as a certified school board member by the Florida School Board Association. All of us have opportunities to do training and learning through the Florida School Board Association. All of us have taken opportunities to do that. We gather points, and there's required curriculum that required training that we have to take in order to get that certification. And all it is, it just helps us, like Dr. White was alluding here today, we're always learning in our profession and we're always asking questions. And these are professional programs that help us become better school board members. Only difference is that we're getting credit through the Florida School Board Association. But I can tell you that all of my colleagues on this board, in my opinion, are certified grade A school board members that do a lot of great for our school district, and I'm just honored to be able to have that certification through the Florida School Board Association. But every single one of my colleagues on here care about our school district. They care about everything that goes on in here, and it is an honor to sit up here with all of you and be able to be a part of this awesome team. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. And with that being said, this meeting is adjourned.